what you need, but take less than you give. Could you close every day without the glory and fame? Could you hold your head high when no one knows your name? That's how legends are made. At least that's what they say. We say goodbye, but never let go. We live, we die, 'cause you can't save every soul. Gotta take every chance to show that you're the kind of man who will never look back, never look down, and never let go. Can you lose everything you ever had planned? Can you sit down again and play another hand? Could you risk everything for the chance of being alone? Under pressure, find the grace. Would you come undone? That's how legends are made. At least that's what they say. We say goodbye, but never let go. We live, we die, 'cause you can't save every soul. Gotta take every chance to show that you're the kind of man who will never look back, never look down, and never let go. Gotta take every chance to show that you're the kind of man who will never look back, will never look down, and never let go. We say goodbye, but never let go. We live, we die, but you can't save every soul. Gotta take every chance to show that you're the kind of man who will never look back, never look down, and never let go. Will never look back, and never look down, and never let go.
Good evening, folks. Welcome to the Ed Boston Podcast Network, and you have Ed and Amy here with you tonight. It is July the 8th, 2016, and from reading the title of the show, you can tell that it is a somber topic. We are here to discuss the horrific massacre of 5 Dallas police officers, 7 others that were wounded by a terrible madman in Dallas last night. It is our policy, and we will continue with that, to not share the name of the perpetrator of such evil acts. He won't get any additional publicity by name from us, and if he wanted to be a martyr, he'll have to be a martyr somewhere else. In my opinion, this show is about the loss of brave lives, and he was a coward. And so that's what we're going to talk about. This topic is especially close to my wife Amy, as she has been in law enforcement for over 18 years, working in corrections. Her father spent a full career, 3 careers in law enforcement. Many of those years on the road as an officer, and so she'll have some unique ways of looking at things from a perspective of a police officer's daughter and as a active law enforcement person right now. Father God in heaven, we come to you just now, and we lift up tonight's show to you. We lift up each family that is hurting tonight because they lost a loved one. We lift up the memory of those 5 officers and their families, Father, that now no longer has the person that they looked up to lead the family any longer. Father, help them mentally, help them spiritually, help them financially, and in all ways that they need it. Comfort them tonight, Father, at a time where comfort is hard to come by. Love them tonight, Father, like you always love them. And Father, be with those who were wounded. We pray that you will heal their bodies and make them whole again, the best that can be expected. And Father, what we expect and what you can do are many times 2 different things, Father. So just do what you do best, and that is be the God of the universe. Thank you for hearing our prayer, and we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, we're going to basically dedicate this show to the reaction of what happened, and being our reaction, the reaction of others. We've got sound bites from Chief Brown from Dallas. We've got sound bites from President Obama. We've got sound bites from Attorney General Lynch. We'll play all of those for you during the podcast, but Amy, this morning when you heard for the first time, because I know that this happened after we went to bed last night.
Right.
What was your initial reaction? I know that you normally scan Facebook just to see if something happened with a police officer overnight.
And when I got up this morning, when I looked at my phone, I had a message from Trevor, and he said, "Are you up?" And then the next message said, 5 police officers killed in Dallas overnight. I instantly got a sick feeling in my stomach. Instant. And I just sat down in my chair and started to pray. That was the first and only thing I could think to do right then. And my heart just was broken for the other officers, for their family members. And I've tried not to watch news or listen to the news, because the way they talk about it is almost instead of, and I do have to say, because I listened to some Fox News at work today, and I think that they actually did a really nice job of downplaying the crazy man that did this, and actually talked about these officers being heroes.
We talked a few minutes ago that there is one thing that every single person we hear interviewed that was on the scene
Right.
says over and over and over. And what was that?
That these officers ran toward the danger. They ran toward this madman that was opening fire on them, as opposed to running away.
And it doesn't matter what, black, white,
Absolutely.
young, old, people that were in the protest that was that was finishing up. It doesn't matter who it is, that stuck out. Because
Absolutely.
it just continues time after time after time to hear eyewitness accounts of the police officers running to the danger,
Right.
and everybody else running away from the danger.
And that just shows the dedication of these officers that they have to protect the innocent, to protect the public, to protect, everyone around them that they can. Their willingness to run into danger is their way of life. They put on that uniform and that badge every day with one goal in mind, and that is to make it home at night. Unfortunately, those 5 officers put that uniform on that morning, and they did not make it home.
Well, I heard the Texas Lieutenant Governor, and we're not going to go into his interview that is gaining some fame because he was out there pretty far with some of the things that he said. But he did say that law enforcement and military are some of the only professions in the world where when they put their uniform on to go to work, they don't know if they'll come home that night to take it off.
Absolutely. I mean, that's never a given.
And he said, my job doesn't require that. The president's job doesn't require that. Very few people in the world's job requires that.
That's very true.
And it just is impressed upon me, much the same as yesterday when we were at the Ark. The awesome size of what the Ark is, what's impressed me today is that those brave men and women were going to the danger.
Absolutely.
And that's what we heard on September 11th. And you've seen videos of people running
Absolutely.
to danger. And let's go ahead and listen to what Chief Brown has to say. I've been very impressed with his handling of the media, his response. We talked a little bit ago when he was talking about the treatment that police officers get on a daily basis,
Right.
and ask people to show their support today.
Absolutely.
He was about to break down into tears, and we assumed that was because he had 5 sons that
Right.
were no longer here, and it was under his watch that took place. And that's not laying any blame at the foot of Chief Brown, but that just says how people in the law enforcement community feel about their fellow brothers and sisters.
Heavens, yes. I mean, it's a brotherhood that is unbreakable.
Let's listen to Chief Brown.
and we tried to negotiate for several hours. Negotiations broke down. We had an exchange of gunfire with the suspect. We saw no other option but to use our bomb robot and place a device on its extension for it to detonate where the suspect was. Other options would have exposed our officers to grave danger. The suspect is deceased as a result of detonating the bomb. The reporting that the suspect killed himself is, we've confirmed that he's been deceased because of the detonation of the bomb. Our hostage negotiator did an exceptional job getting this suspect to talk before he died during the hours of negotiating that eventually broke down. And I want to share with you some of the comments from this suspect. The suspect said he was upset about Black Lives Matter. He said he was upset about the recent police shootings. The suspect said he was upset at white people. The suspect stated he wanted to kill white people, especially white officers. The suspect stated that we will eventually find the IEDs. The suspect stated he was not affiliated with any groups, and he stated that he did this alone. The suspect said other things that are part of this investigation so that we can make sure that everyone associated with this tragic event is brought to justice. So as the mayor said, we won't expand on any further on what other suspects we have interviewed or looked at or their status until we get further into this investigation and get closer to a conclusion of what and who are all involved. Join us in helping us comfort the grieving officers' families. And I trust that soon, because we're working very diligently in processing the crime scene, to find evidence to bring any other suspects to justice that were a part of this. But please pray for our strength through this trying time. Thank you.
And so Chief Brown was very enlightening there. He said something at the end that they were still working, and I think that was at the earlier press conference in the day, still working to make sure that there was no other people that were involved. And I want to make sure that's kind of clear, because they're now pretty much saying that this was a lone wolf, acted on his own, not associated with any other organization or anything like that. But that doesn't mean that he didn't have help planning. So there's no evidence that says that. I'm not sure how they've come up with the other people that they are put in custody this morning or last night, whichever it was. And I don't know if they've been totally cleared, have been released. I don't have an update on that. But I know that there were other people that were taken into custody.
And you know, you used a word that means a whole lot, and that word was planning. Because this was not something that he just all of a sudden off the cuff decided, I'm going to go and shoot these officers. What he did and the way he did it was methodically planned. He was a sniper. He had to have. I mean, that's not just something that you jump off and do. You know, he had to plan his shots. how far his accuracy, you know, I mean, he did all of the sniper acts that a sniper would actually carry out.
And with you bringing that up, I want to talk about something that has bothered me today. Early in the day, they had some pictures of this madman. Then they found out he had been in the military, Army Reserve or Army National Guard veteran, served in Afghanistan. And then after they obtained a picture of him in his military uniform, it seemed like that was the dominant picture that was being shown.
That's frustrating.
And that is very, very bothersome to me. His military training did not teach him to carry out what he carried out today.
Absolutely not.
Military training does not teach you to single out innocent people.
Absolutely.
As a matter of fact, military training is exactly the opposite. And, you know, I'm a big person on the subtleties of what the media does and the way they make us think about things. And I believe that they're using that military picture to keep people that are veterans, families of military, etc., those people that are military supporters, from being quite as angry
Right.
about what happened as they might be.
Well, it's not making him out to be the madman, the crazy, evil person that he actually was.
And I say shame on the media for doing that.
Absolutely.
I've seen at least 3 different pictures of the man today, and now we see him in his military uniform almost exclusively, at least on Fox. That's who I watched today.
And people need to understand, because he has on a military uniform does not make him a hero. It makes this man was an honest to God madman.
Well, nobody is in their right mind would say that every person that is in the military is a hero, because there are some bad people in the military.
Absolutely.
That's why there's military prisons and military
Right.
lawyers and military
Right.
trials, because there are people that get in trouble in the military. So that's not a secret.
Right.
And to me, it's a typical media way of handling things.
Absolutely.
And again, I can only speak for Fox. I'm just imagining the other stations. If Fox is doing that, I got to believe the more liberal slanted places are maybe even going farther than what Fox did. One of the things about his military training is that he was actually not trained as a sniper in the military.
Wow.
He was, I believe they said, a 12 whiskey, which I forget what they called it. I should be better prepared. I heard it today and it slipped my mind. But he wasn't trained as a sniper. He had nothing in his military record that would indicate that he would be a person that would do something like this.
Wow.
He had all the normal medals that a person that had served the length of time he served with one tour of duty in Afghanistan would have.
Wow.
No negative things in his military record, no disciplinary actions. And I should add this in here right now. As far as we know right now from what is being reported, we all know that when things like this happen, stories change
Right.
after the fact. We may come up with something a week from now that is totally different. So I'll put that disclaimer in there. If you're listening to this weeks after the shooting take place, some of the things that we have said here on the show tonight could change.
Right.
Very well may change. Because early reporting is always sketchy at best. Another thing I wanted to bring up is I heard today on Fox that of the 7 officers that were wounded, either all of them have been treated and released, or their condition has upgraded during the course of the day.
Wow.
So,
Thank God for that.
yes, that is wonderful news. They are either well enough to be home, or their condition through the course of the day has improved. We still need to pray for them. I know I heard a few minutes ago they were talking to an officer that was friends with one of the people that were wounded, and they elected not to do surgery on that person, which meant he still had
Right.
lead in his body, so to speak. Bodies weren't made to have lead put in them.
That's right.
And so that tells me that from this day forward, he could have complications. And so we need to continue to remember the prayers for those that were wounded. Earlier in the day as well, I can't remember who was being interviewed, but they gave a website that you can, there is a fund that gives money to families of fallen police officers. I'll try to figure that out and either post it on our Facebook page or on the site later on. It help, those families have lost their breadwinner,
Absolutely.
at least part of their breadwinning, and in addition to all the other things that you think about, the grief, the nights alone, the no father there to go to ball games, all those things you can think of, is that if somebody doesn't help, they're financially ruined
Right.
as well.
Absolutely.
And how terrible. First of all, people in the police line of work get paid squat.
That's a fact.
And, I mean, you were growing up, your dad worked 2 and 3 jobs at a time.
Absolutely.
All the time.
All the time.
You rarely ever saw him because he probably only got 2 to 4 hours of sleep a night
At the most.
because of working.
And that could have been during the day, it could have been of an evening, it could have been at night, because he rotated and he worked so many different jobs doing different things to support a family.
And we know plenty of law enforcement people today
Right,
that,
absolutely.
you work with people that have to have second jobs
Absolutely.
and have businesses on the side and things like that because the money's not enough to make ends meet. So it's bad enough that when they work for little to nothing, and I say that figuratively. They do get paid, but comparative to the level of importance of their job, it's peanuts.
Absolutely.
And then to have that little bit taken away from the family because of a madman is just an injustice in itself. And I'm thankful for organizations that help take care of the families of those who are fallen. Last year, there were 33 officers that were killed in the line of duty. I believe they stated in non-accident type situations, meaning that intentionally inflicted by perpetrators. They're on a pace this year to surpass that, and we're just now barely over halfway in the year. We've talked many times about open season on police officers. We've heard it mentioned several times today. We heard at the time when the riots happened in Baltimore how police officers kind of backed off and crime went into new highs. However, overall in the country, crime is down. But that doesn't mean that police lives are safe now.
Oh, heavens, no.
Obviously, 5 of them lost their life last night.
Right.
Another incident today, I believe, in Louisiana, not the one that everybody's talking about, but a person called the police for whatever reason, domestic dispute, something of that nature. When the officer showed up, the person had called it in as a hoax and opened fire on the police officer. The officer also was able to get shots off, and both the perpetrator and the officer survived the attack. My thinking says Shreveport, Louisiana, that happened. And one of the things that we know is that when these kinds of things happen, A, there's copycats, B, there's people that feel empowered, that
Absolutely.
if this other person could do it, then maybe they could do it. And so there are numerous big cities around the country today that are making it to where no officer is patrolling alone. They're patrolling in pairs. Not that would have done anything about last night. You know, they were running up in pairs and singles and
Absolutely.
and in group. So, but it's more for the officer that pulls somebody over and
Right.
walks up to a vehicle all by themselves.
Which, by the way, is an extremely dangerous thing for an officer to do, is to pull as traffic stops.
Well, you know, I'm sure that most of the time license numbers are called in and things like that, and they try to get to know some things before they get out of the car. But basically, whenever they get out of the car, they're coming out blind.
Absolutely.
They don't know what's in the car. They don't necessarily know who's in the car,
Right.
because just because a license plate comes back with information doesn't mean that's who's driving the car.
Absolutely not. It could be a stolen plate.
Well, it could be a family member. It
Right.
could be, somebody just using somebody's car that
Right.
is okay to have it. So they're going in blind, and there's a lot of bad people that don't like the police.
Yes, very much so.
And that brings up the irony in this entire thing, is that it was a Black Lives Matter protest of 2 police shootings that happened earlier in the week, one in Louisiana, one in Minnesota. Now, Amy and I talked about this. We're not going to give that attention, not because it's police action, but because we don't want to take away from what happened in Dallas. It is part of this part of the story, though. That's what the protest in Dallas was about.
Right.
Black Lives Matter were protesting what had happened in those 2 places. I'll insert here, Amy and I both fully support the justice system doing what they need to do. If there is a bad police officer, they need to be weeded out. They need to be not being in law enforcement. They need to be punished to the full extent of the law.
Absolutely.
And we know that police officers are and should be held to a higher standard,
Yep.
because people put trust in them. So that's not, I put that disclaimer in there because we're not going to talk about that. And it's not because we don't believe in justice. I told Amy, I believe it's 3 separate stories, personally. There's the story of the person that was killed in Louisiana. That's story 1. There's a story of the person killed in Minnesota. That's story number 2. And then there's the story of the 5 police officers that were massacred in Dallas last night. That's story number 3, and that's the story we're covering tonight. So Black Lives Matter is having a protest. By all accounts that I've heard, it was a very peaceful protest. As a matter of fact, I heard more than one person talking about the police officers that were providing security and all, even taking pictures with people, talking back and forth, conversing. It was not an adversarial type of situation.
Right.
But the irony is that they were assisting a Black Lives Matter group who was founded upon protesting police.
Right.
They were protesting police shootings, and those police officers last night were protecting them.
Absolutely.
In order for their First Amendment rights to stay intact.
Absolutely.
How ironic it is that those 5 gave their lives. The other 7 that were wounded gave injuries to protect the people who are protesting them.
The people that hate them, they gave their lives to protect people that hate them.
And that's not to say that everybody that was in a protest hated police officers. Because, I've heard several interviews today, and it's very strange, actually, that the tone of the protesters, the tone of the police department is very laid back. It's not like, I've not heard tons of anger today.
I think it's just grief at this point.
Well, I think it's grief and shock, and
right.
It hasn't sunk in, and I've heard some, well, I said I haven't heard, I've heard a couple people that got worked up, but it's been more of a feeling of, let's just find out the details.
Right.
Let's take care of business, which means taking care of the families of the officers and the officers who got wounded to make sure that they're okay.
Right.
And let's go on with life. Now, for the families of the 5, life will never be the same. For all 7 officers that were wounded, their life will never be the same. They'll always remember
Absolutely.
7/7/16, not like we do.
No.
And for the thing that we had that enjoyed 7/7/16, they'll have that engraved in their minds as the day that I was shot by a madman.
Absolutely.
But every other police officer that was on the scene will be affected too, because one, there'll be guilt as to why those 5 were killed and I didn't get killed.
Right. Why did I survive?
Why did I survive? Why did I not get wounded?
Right.
Why am I as good as I was the day before, except now my mind is different. And I heard him talking about every officer that was on the scene will have to go through counseling and
Absolutely.
and look out for post-traumatic shock and those things.
Right.
And nothing will be the same for them. I'm going to continue to talk about Black Lives Matter a little bit because I am so torn by the responses that I've heard from people that claim to associate with the Black Lives Matter movement. First, from the organization Black Lives Matter, they put out a tweet that says, hashtag Black Lives Matter advocates dignity, justice, and freedom, not murder.
Huh.
Organizers and supporters of the Black Lives Matter movement have condemned the slaying of police officers in Dallas during a protest against the fatal police shooting of black men in Louisiana and Minnesota. In a statement posted online, the group, which has decided decried police violence against African American, deplored the videotaped deaths of 2 people earlier this past week, and called for a transformation in policing in America. In Dallas, the group noted they had gathered seeking justice when police were ambushed by snipers. A dozen officers were shot, 5 fatally, along with 2 civilians. 1 suspect was killed. Dallas police officials said it was unclear how many snipers. Well, we'll skip over all those things. But we heard, and it's in this article too, that the suspect was upset about Black Lives Matter.
Yep.
And that I don't think it means he was mad at Black Lives Matter. He was upset that Black Lives Matter and the 2 killings that went on in other parts of the country earlier in the week. Supporters of Black Lives Matter have condemned the violent attacks on police. New York Daily News columnist Sean King said on Twitter he hates police brutality but doesn't hate police. He called yesterday's violence wrong on every level. He also said that blaming Black Lives Matter for the police officers' murders is sick. I don't understand other than I know that something's got to stop and something's got to change. I have an audio clip that will be offensive to some people from both sides. Be offensive to people that support Black Lives Matter in that I would have the audacity to play this. It will offend people that would say police lives matter at some of the things that are going to be said in this clip. Mark Dice, who I respect greatly, put this out today, pulled things off of Twitter, and you have to remember he will use the N-word in here numerous times. When he does that, he's not using that himself, he is reading that. And let's listen to what Mark Dice had to say.
Countless Black Lives Matter supporters are calling the terrorist who assassinated 5 police officers in Dallas last night a hero. Others are tweeting out his name with "Rest in Peace." Let's take a look at just a small sample of some of these postings on social media. This black man says, "They say Micah Xavier Johnson was the shooter. If that's so, rest in peace, brother. I salute you." Another person posting "rest in peace" along with his name. This black woman, the same thing, says, "I'm sure you thought you were doing the right thing. Centuries of oppression can do that to a man." Micah Xavier Johnson, rest in peace, brother. Hashtag Black Lives Matter. They just go on and on and on. They also call him a hero. Take a look at just a small sample of some of these tweets from these black people, these black supremacist psychos, these subhuman scum. Mike Xavier Johnson is a hero in this woman's book. Mike Xavier Johnson is a hero to this black man as well. He saw abuse and he did something. Of course, he didn't care about the black-on-black crime that plagues most inner-city communities. Places like Chicago that have an average of 15 people shot every single day, night after night after night. To me, this nigga a hero. Finally woke these people up and made them realize something needs to be done. Yeah, something needs to be done to stop the black supremacist scum and the Black Lives Matter terrorist movement. They just go on and on and on. Xavier Johnson, my nigga. says this guy. Of course, I will be called a racist in the comments of this video and all over social media and the internet and probably mainstream media just for pointing out these facts now that we are living in a liberal wasteland. Generation Z, Generation Zombie, almost every one of these people, these subhuman scum, are millennials. And I think based off of their names and their profile photos, every single one of them is black. I think I saw one Mexican as well. Rest in peace, Micah Xavier Johnson. The nigga said, bleep it, and then got to taking pigs out. Another black man. This guy's name is Black Kid. He doesn't blame Micah Xavier Johnson for the reaction. He blames the white cops that keep killing black people. Enough to push him to the edge. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. Absolutely despicable. Oh, here's a black woman. I mean, most of them are black men, but there are some black women which are also supporting him. Like this woman says, well, she doesn't support killing people, but she says the terrorist is a hero. I'm Mark Dice. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my YouTube channel here if you're new. We will continue to fearlessly denounce and expose the black crime movement and the liberal tyrants that are in control of the United States government. Stay tuned. More videos coming soon.
Okay, my first reaction or comment is to say, if I had a way to have beeped out the person's name, I would have, but I didn't. So that his name did make it onto the show, and for that, I regret that. I'm confused at how the hierarchy of the Black Lives Matter denounces something, and the way that Dice came up with those tweets was he looked under Black Lives Matter or BLM. He didn't just go and find them. Every one of those tweets had to have had something about BLM or Black Lives Matter hashtagged in them. And we know from Ferguson, we know from Baltimore, that BLM has perpetrated massive amounts of violence. So I'm having a hard time personally juggling the fact that we read that Black Lives Matter has condemned the massacre in Dallas, but you've got Black Lives Matter people all over the place thinking that this guy was a hero. And, you know, there were some despicable things that were read there. You know, Amy's not talking probably because her face is 14 shades of red right now. And...
well, I mean, it irritates me, and this may... I don't mean for this to sound racist, but when a black person uses that kind of language, it's okay. That's acceptable. If a white person were to use that kind of language, they would automatically be a racist. They would be... I mean, it would be horrible for a white person to use that kind of language. And I hear this all the time because they say, well, that's how we talk to each other. You don't understand. That's how we are. It's unacceptable. If it's not acceptable for me to say it, it's not acceptable for them to say it. And
Dice made the point that he will be crucified on social media and maybe even in the mainstream media.
Absolutely. They think it's offensive if we say it. I think it's offensive if anybody says it.
And, you know, that clip, if all you got out of it was that he used the N-word 2 or 3 times, not of his own doing, but reading something that somebody wrote, then you've totally missed the point.
Absolutely.
and you're not going to get it no matter what. So nothing that we can do to help you other than to pray for you. But I'm so torn on this issue of, well, we'll get into the president's statement. We'll get into Loretta Lynch's statement in a few minutes, and how all of a sudden people like Obama and Lynch are all for people having the right to protest, and don't let the way of one person take away your voice. And I don't get it. Are they advocating violent protests? I mean, last night's protest, by all accounts, was not violent.
No?
Well, until a certain point.
Right, exactly.
And the verdict's still out on what this guy believed and who he followed and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What we do know is that the chief of police of Dallas, who is a black man, said that one of the things that the man said as they were in negotiations with him, with a hostage negotiator, is that he was upset about Black Lives Matter. And so I'm not trying to make more out of something than what there is. All I'm saying, and I've heard it repeated numerous times today, is that something has got to change.
Absolutely.
You know, the fact that, and Greta Van Susteren was saying it right before we turned TV off, is that the group Black Lives Matter, in what that they were putting out, said, don't judge an entire organization by the acts of one individual. When in fact, Black Lives Matter are looking down at all police officers.
Absolutely.
Over the acts of one or two, and whatever the number is. It's a small percentage of
Right.
police officers
Right.
that are bad. If you think any different than that, then you're a closed-minded person.
Absolutely.
I'll give you that there are bad cops out there. I'll give that to you. But I'm going to tell you that the percentage is very, very low.
And if you think that they're all bad, then I pray to God that you never need one.
Well, last night ought to prove that.
Absolutely.
They were protecting Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter people were running away to protect themselves, which they should have.
Absolutely.
And the white police officers, and I don't know, may have been some black police officers too, but the man made the comment that he wanted to kill white people, and especially white police officers.
Right.
So I'm not making stuff up. That comes from the mouth of the madman, according to the black police chief of Dallas. And so I'm just struggling.
Those officers ran directly into it.
And they knew that the fire was coming from up high, which means that their ability to cover themselves was almost non-existent.
Absolutely.
It was, if it wasn't non-existent, it was severely hindered.
Absolutely.
And they still ran toward danger. We're going to let's look first at what President Obama, who was in Poland, I believe, for a NATO summit, what he had to say on this topic.
With your understanding, I want to begin with a few words about the situation back in the United States, specifically the situation in Dallas, Texas. My team's been keeping me updated throughout the morning, the evening in Dallas. I spoke this morning with Mayor Rawlings of Dallas to convey the deepest condolences of the American people. I told him that the federal government will provide whatever assistance Dallas may need as it deals with this tremendous tragedy. We still don't know all the facts. What we do know is that there has been a vicious, calculated, and despicable attack on law enforcement. Police in Dallas were on duty doing their jobs, keeping people safe during peaceful protests. These law enforcement officers were targeted, and nearly a dozen officers were shot. 5 were killed. Other officers and at least 1 civilian were wounded. Some are in serious condition, and we are praying for their recovery. As I told Mayor Rawlings, I believe that I speak for every single American when I say that we are horrified over these events and that we stand united with the people and the police department in Dallas.
Okay, I stopped the I got sidetracked for a second. I stopped the audio because had Obama stopped right there, I would have had nothing negative to say about his response. However, he didn't stop there.
According to police, there are multiple suspects. We will learn more, undoubtedly, about their twisted motivations. But let's be clear, there's no possible justification for these kinds of attacks or any violence against law enforcement. The FBI is already in touch with Dallas police, and anyone involved in these senseless murders will be held fully accountable. Justice will be done. I will have more to say about this as the facts become more clear. For now, let me just say that even as yesterday I spoke about our need to be concerned as all Americans about racial disparities in our criminal justice system, I also said yesterday that our police have an extraordinarily difficult job, and the vast majority of them do their job in outstanding fashion. I also indicated the degree to which we need to be supportive of those officers who do their job each and every day, protecting us and protecting our communities. Today is a wrenching reminder of the sacrifices that they make for us. We also know that when people are armed with powerful weapons, unfortunately, it makes attacks like these more deadly and more tragic. And in the days ahead, we're going to have to consider those realities as well. In the meantime, today, our focus is on the victims and their families. They are heartbroken. The entire city of Dallas is grieving. Police across America, which is a tight-knit family, feels this loss to their core. And we're grieving with them. I'd ask all Americans to say a prayer for these officers and their families. Keep them in your thoughts. And as a nation, let's remember to express our profound gratitude to our men and women in blue, not just today, but every day.
Okay, that was the White House official channel on YouTube of the president's remarks. Not sure that they included everything. They may have left some things out because I know that he talked about the issue in Louisiana and Minnesota. I know that he talked about gun control, and I wish for once that when something horrible happens, he would stick to the subject.
Absolutely.
If he did that, he would be acting presidential, which I'm not quite sure he has the ability to do.
Right.
Because he doesn't do it. He
has never done it.
Never. And he continues then to make it a political issue.
Right.
Death is not a political issue. The 5 families don't want to hear what his opinion on gun control is. I don't think. I can't speak for them. If my loved one was killed, I would not want to hear the president using my loved one's death as a way to gain political points. It would infuriate me.
Absolutely. He's doing these people a great injustice by talking the way he is, too.
To include what happened in Louisiana and what happened in Minnesota, to me, is a great injustice. Is a great injustice to what happened last night.
Absolutely.
Because to me, it's giving, even if it's just a little bit, and I don't think it's just a little bit, but even if it was just a little bit of it's okay to take it out on police.
Right.
You know, because that's why he did it.
Justification.
The president said there's no justification for crime on police, but he turns around and gives justification for crime on police. That's called talking out of both sides of your mouth.
Absolutely.
And that's not acceptable. You know, 2 weeks from now, when it's over with, and he wants to talk about gun control, he's going to do it anyway.
Oh, well, yeah.
So
I don't think he's given a speech yet that wasn't a topic that got brought up.
So, you know, why can't he give it a little bit of rest when the event happens?
Absolutely.
I believe that the weapon the man used was an assault weapon. If that's the case, that's not a legal weapon in the United States anyway. Assault rifles are not legal. Semi-automatic rifles are legal. Just because a weapon is a semi-automatic does not make it an assault rifle. AR does not stand for assault rifle. It's actually the brand name. It's the designation. We're not allowed as civilians to own a machine gun. That's illegal. Am I right?
In some states, yeah.
So, the point is, the president needs to be talking about the appropriate things at the appropriate time. You know, he talks about it at the inappropriate times, and then when nothing's gone on for a while, you might hear him say something about it every once in a while, but he gets all quiet until the next bad thing happens, and then boy, ding, it's my opportunity. I'm going to jump right on the back of these dead people. I'm going to ride that horse to death. I'm going to be a bleeding heart liberal and let the blood of dead people help make my point for me. That ought to disgust every person.
Absolutely.
Not just conservatives, not just people that believe in the Second Amendment. It ought to disgust everybody that your president would ride the back and blood of dead Americans for his own political gain. It ought to disgust you. I don't care if you like George Bush or you didn't like George Bush. I don't care what side you came down on, if you liked his economic policies, etc., etc. I guarantee you one thing. When crises happened, he acted presidential.
Absolutely.
No question. If you question that, then you are closed-minded again. Because the way I can tell you that he did that is look at what he's done since he's been in office.
Look at how he handled 9/11.
Well, he handled 9/11 in an amazing way.
Absolutely.
He the country gathered together at 9/11, and it wasn't blacks and whites, and
Right.
we didn't talk about illegals and legals. We talked about Americans, and we've been attacked.
Absolutely.
And what he does since he's been in office is almost every time you see him in the media, it's doing something with or for people who've been injured in the military,
Right.
dealing with people. He came out with a statement today, supportive. He's a Texan, supporting the people of Dallas as they, he didn't put anything gun control related in there.
Right.
He didn't say Obama needs to shut his pie hole and get off of gun control, and maybe we'd kill a bunch of these thugs before they killed more people. He didn't give that opinion. He was presidential and gave a presidential response. Now, Trevor reminds me that Rahm Emanuel, who is the mayor of Chicago, used to be Obama's chief of staff, I believe, one of his top advisors, always said, never let a good crisis go to waste. That was his theory in politics. Crisis comes up, jump on it. Don't let it go to waste. You got to go jump on it right now. Shame on you people that believe that.
That is just a sad remark. And it didn't make any difference what the crisis was. That's just a sad remark.
And again, we look at the difference in administrations. When 9/11 happened, Bush called for prayer.
Absolutely.
There was a national service at the National Cathedral for prayer.
Yep. Well, he stood on the mound of rubble and prayed with the firemen and the police officers and construction people he stood on there and prayed.
And I don't mean this to be controversial. I really don't. But you mentioned it when we were listening to Obama. I heard a person ask today, I wonder how many and how much of a delegation Obama will send to Dallas for the police funerals, because he's been known to send delegations from the White House for people that have been killed and the Black Lives Matter jump on it.
Absolutely.
Case in point, Ferguson.
Absolutely.
And Michael Brown. He had members of his D.C. delegation in attendance at Michael Brown's funeral.
And not one police officer's funeral has anyone from the White House gone to.
Not that we know of.
Not that we know of.
And so I asked that question not to start trouble, and I hope he proves me wrong. I hope he sends a delegation to Dallas. I'd have a hard time accepting that it was a sincere gesture, but if he proves me wrong, I'll make note of it on a show.
Right, absolutely.
And say, well, at least he sent people. I ain't going to say at least he did the right thing, because I don't know if he'd be doing it for the right reason. And my detractors out there are thinking, well, it doesn't matter what Obama does, he ain't going to get your approval. They're probably right.
Ding, ding, ding.
But I'm showing the difference in the previous administration and this administration and the way they handle things. Now let's listen to Attorney General Lynch as she capitalizes on the political issue. Now, get this. She says a lot of very good things. This clip is 4 minutes and 53 seconds. The majority of the things she says is good. And I don't understand why liberals have such a hard time of leaving it at just good stuff. Why they have to then insert opinions and liberal bias into things is beyond me. But you'll hear.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. Last night, At least 5 police officers were shot and killed. Several more were injured, along with 2 civilians, as they sought to protect a peaceful protest in Dallas, Texas. Our thoughts and our prayers and condolences go out to the families of those who have lost loved ones. The Department of Justice, including the FBI, ATF, the U.S. Marshals Service, and the U.S. Attorney's Office on the scene, is working closely with our state and local counterparts, and we intend to provide any assistance that we can to investigate this attack and also to help heal a community that has been severely shaken and deeply scarred by an unfathomable tragedy. This is an unfolding situation. We'll be providing additional information when it is available and appropriate. But more so, this has been a week of profound grief and heartbreaking loss. The peaceful protest that was planned in Dallas last night was organized in response to the tragic deaths of Alton Sterling in Louisiana and Philando Castile in Minnesota. Now, we've opened a civil rights investigation in Louisiana, and we're providing assistance to local authorities in Minnesota who are leading the investigation there. And today, we are feeling the devastating loss of Dallas area Rapid Transit Officer Brent Thompson and 4 other fallen officers whose names remain unreleased as we await notification to all of the families. Now, after the events of this week, Americans across our country are feeling a sense of helplessness, of uncertainty, and of fear. Now, these feelings are understandable and they are justified, but the answer must not be violence. The answer is never violence. Rather, the answer, our answer, all our answer, must be action. Calm, peaceful, collaborative, and determined action. We must continue working to build trust between communities and law enforcement. We must continue working to guarantee every person in this country equal justice under the law. And we must take a hard look at the ease with which wrongdoers can get their hands on deadly weapons and the frequency with which they use them. And we must reflect on the kind of country that we want to build and the kind of society that we are choosing to pass on to our children. And above all, we must reject the easy impulses of bitterness and rancor and embrace the difficult work, but the important work, the vital work of finding a path forward together. And above everything, we must remind ourselves that we're all Americans, and that as Americans, we share not just a common land, but a common life, not just common goals, but a common heart and soul. Now, those we've lost this week have come from different backgrounds, different neighborhoods, but today they're mourned by officers, by residents, by family and friends, by men and women and children who loved them, who needed them, and who will miss them always. They are mourned by all of us. To the families of all who've lost their lives in this series of tragedies, we share your pain and your loss. To our brothers and sisters who wear the badge, I want you to know that I am deeply grateful for the difficult and dangerous work that you do every day to keep our streets safe and our nation secure. Our hearts are broken by this loss, and the Department of Justice will do all that we can to support you in the days ahead. And to those who seek to improve our country through peaceful protest and protected speech, I want you to know that your voice is important. Do not be discouraged by those who would use your lawful actions as a cover for their heinous violence. We will continue to safeguard your constitutional rights and to work with you in the difficult mission of building a better nation and a brighter future. And to all Americans, I ask you, I implore you, do not let this week precipitate a new normal in this country. I ask you to turn to each other, not against each other, as we move forward. Let us support one another. Let us help heal one another. And I urge you to remember, today and every day, that we are one nation, we are one people, and we stand together. May God bless the families and the loved ones of all who were taken from us this week, and comfort their grief with his everlasting grace. And may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
As I said, for 4 minutes and 53 seconds, the majority of everything that Attorney General Lynch said was on point, very good. I agree with most everything she said, but I can't get over the fact that she says, to all of those who would peacefully protest and have their voices heard, don't let one person speak for you. And she said, and we support you. Now, to me, she said, Black Lives Matter, we support you.
Absolutely.
That's exactly what she said, just not in those words. And I support free speech, very much so. Free speech does not include violence. It does not include inciting violence. And I'm not quite sure how a group that has been responsible for much violence and inciting much violence can have the Attorney General's backing. Now, of course, she would say, I didn't say Black Lives Matter. She didn't have to. It was not necessary. We read her loud and clear.
Absolutely.
And the same as George W. Bush said to the terrorists overseas, they'll soon hear us loud and clear. Yes, Attorney General Lynch, we read you loud and clear. Something's got to change in this country. I don't know if it is the hyphen before the word American. But everybody should be upset that 5 police officers were massacred last night. She said everyone deplores, or something to that effect, what happened. No, not everybody does, because we heard somebody reading tweets of numerous people who encouraged and applauded and called a hero the person who perpetrated these acts. So no, not everybody deplores the violence that went on. And you may have a different opinion than me. You may think including the person, and notice she got their names in, but the person that died in Louisiana and the person who died in Minnesota, you may think that all of this is entwined together, and not my way of thinking that it was 3 separate incidents. And that's okay. You can think what you want. I'm not even going to say that you're wrong, because the way I look at something is going to be different than the way other people look at things. But something has got to change. We need to turn to God.
Absolutely.
We need to go to our knees in prayer. We need to ask God for forgiveness for allowing things to get the way they have. And that doesn't matter if you're black, white. You know, the little kid song says red, yellow, black and white. They are precious in His sight. It's a fact. It may be a silly kid song, but it's spot on. God does not care what color we are. I don't even know if that even registers to God, what color we are. I'm thinking it's like not on His list of.
Yeah, it's a mute point to Him. I mean, He created all of us, so why would it matter?
I just have this feeling that when we get to the pearly gates and we answer to God, nobody's going to have to answer for being black, white, red, yellow, whatever color you are. I don't think that's going to be one of the things we have to answer for.
No, I'm not thinking so either.
But I think perpetrating hate is something we'll have to answer for.
Absolutely.
And I'm not ignorant. Is there racism still in America? Absolutely. From all different angles. There's white people that hate blacks. There's black people that hate whites. There's black people and white people both that hate Hispanics. There's Hispanics that hate Americans, and the list goes on and on and on. But that doesn't make it right. And that doesn't make it anything the way it should be. Father God, we come to you tonight as we close, thanking you for the opportunity to share our thoughts and opinions. Thank you for the great nation that we have, that we can do that. And just like those people that were voicing their First Amendment rights last night, we have the same right to do that here tonight. Father, I would pray that nobody would ever be shot or killed or injured or hurt because of one of our shows. We don't do shows to incite people. And Father, I just pray for this country, asking you to forgive us for letting it become the country that it has become. And begging you, Father, to first forgive and then to help us get back to being a godly nation, to get back to being the country that you blessed so greatly for 240 years. Thank you for this day. We pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen. So for Trevor, for my wife Amy, everybody that has anything to do with the Ed Boston Podcast Network, thank you for being with us, and go out and do the right thing.
Have a good evening. God bless.